Screams and savage laughter coming from the slave market square made him stop in his tracks. In the middle of the filthy crowd, 5 Apache women were hanging upside down from a wooden beam. Their bodies were covered in lash marks and bruises, as if someone had deliberately turned them into a living lesson for the entire town. Rowan felt a chill run down his spine, but it was not the brutality of the scene that froze him. It was the tattoo of a thunderbird on the oldest sister's wrist, a sacred symbol, one that had been carved into his own skin by a Chiricahua woman, who had dragged him out of a burning house 5 years ago, the one who had saved his life and made him a man forever in her debt. Rowan's heart pounded so hard it nearly stopped his breath. This could not be a coincidence. This could not be just a random sign. This was a sentence handed down by fate itself. "How much?" Rowan asked, his voice hoarse and low. The slave trader looked at him like another vulture circling the desert. "All 5 of these? You could work your whole damn life and never afford them." Rowan opened his leather pouch and dumped out every last coin he had saved over the years. The silver pieces hit the dusty ground with a clinking sound, like the breaking of chains. "Is that enough?" Rowan asked. The crowd fell silent. Rowan led the 5 Apache women out of Dust Ford before the sunset reached the western mountains. No one said a word. All they heard was the steady rhythm of hooves, the labored breaths of bodies just escaped from torture, and the desert wind slicing past their ears like it was trying to erase every last memory. By the time they reached Rowan's ranch, a lonely wooden house, standing alone in the vast emptiness, the sun had dwindled into a blood-red smear on the horizon. He helped them down, did not touch anyone, just untied the ropes and stepped back. They did not thank him, did not even look at him. They stood in a line, like wounded warriors, still holding on to their dignity with every breath. Rowan built a fire, boiled water, laid bandages on the table. "This place is safe. Rest," he said, his voice low, firm, and absent of cruelty. Then he stepped outside, leaving them to tend to one another. Night fell fast. The desert grew so cold and quiet that even breathing seemed unnaturally loud. Rowan sat on the porch, gun by his side, eyes staring into the distance but ears tuned to every sound inside just in case they tried to run or decided to kill him. Inside, the whispering began. Sahel, the eldest sister, spoke with a voice hoarse but steady. "This man is not a slave buyer." He saw the Thunderbird mark. Nahima stifled a painful breath. "That mark is why some people treat us like demons." "Why did he save us?" Lyria, the boldest, said coldly. "No white man ever has a good reason." Amaita gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "But we are here, and we are still alive." Kia, the youngest, whispered through tears, "If we all die, who will find our children?" That sentence made Rowan, still on the porch, clench his fist until it turned white. He did not understand everything, but he caught 3 words. Find our children. A moment later, the door creaked open. Sahel stepped out. Though exhausted, she carried the strength of someone who had stared down too many storms. Her face was worn and bruised from beatings, but her eyes were still sharp as blades. "You," she said bluntly. "Why did you save us?" Rowan did not flinch. "Because I owe a debt. A Chiricahua woman saved my life once. When I saw the mark on your hand, I knew I had to do what was right." Nahima stepped out behind her, her gaze sharp as an arrow aimed at his heart. "That debt was paid the moment we left Dust Ford. You do not need to keep us here." Rowan looked at all 5 women, then answered with raw truth. "I am not keeping you. I just figured 5 women who were just tortured might need 1 night of sleep without getting beaten." A pause. For the first time, Sahel looked at him without hostility. "Get some sleep," Rowan said. "In the morning, if you want to leave, I will prepare the horses." He turned around, not waiting for a reply. Inside, they lay close together around the fire, none of them closing their eyes. Outside, Rowan stayed awake, never looking away from the darkness. One lonely ranch, 5 women ripped from their own lives, 1 man with a life debt, and fate that night still had not revealed that all of them had unknowingly become a family, not by blood, but by wounds that had yet to heal. Dawn broke, but it was not as beautiful as people often say. Rowan stood out in the yard, brewing coffee, letting the bitter scent blend with the dry, scorching air. The wooden door creaked open. Sahale and Nahima stepped out first, standing tall even though their bodies still trembled from the beatings. The other three followed, like 5 spear tips freshly sharpened. They said nothing to greet him. Rowan did not expect it. He simply handed each of them a water pouch and a piece of hard bread. "It is going to be hotter today," he said, and nothing more. Sahale looked at him for a long time. "We have to go," she said. "I have horses. 5 people. Long road. You will not make it on foot," Rowan replied, voice steady. Lyria crossed her arms. "We did not come here to beg." Rowan could not help but let out a small laugh. "I know, but you are wounded people, not weak ones." No one could argue with that. They set out just as the sun peeked over the sand dunes. After a while, Rowan realized they were not heading toward any village. They were moving directly south into territory crawling with slavers, mercenaries, and hidden camps buried deep in the lawless lands. "You are not going back home?" Rowan asked. Sahale stopped. When she turned to speak, her voice was soft but sharp as heated steel. "We have no home left." Rowan did not press further. He waited. And eventually, Nahima spoke. 15 children, she said, eyes fixed on the distance, as if she could see through the desert. "They were taken 3 days ago. Slavers raided our village. They did not kill the women. They took us to sell, and the children were taken away." 3 days? Rowan asked softly. "Why not ask another tribe for help?" Amita shook her head. "They crossed the border. They moved fast, had someone who knew the terrain. If we do not catch them in 7 days, they will vanish." Rowan felt his pulse pounding in his ears like war drums. "And the 5 of you plan to walk 200 miles just to search for tracks?" Sahale threw him a look that was both proud and desperate. 15 children. 5 of them are ours." Rowan froze. Every piece of the puzzle fell silently into place. Why they had not cried during the beatings. Why they had survived a night of being hung upside down. Why they had not begged, not run, not asked anyone for help. A mother who has lost her child can become the strongest or the most merciless force on earth. Rowan looked at the 5 women in front of him. Beaten. Sold like cattle. Ripped away from their children. And yet still standing. He remembered the Thunderbird tattoo. Remembered the woman who had pulled him back from the edge of death. He owed her a life. But maybe, fate was telling him that one life was not enough. "I am going with you," Rowan said, "until we find all 15 children." The 5 women stared at him, startled, unsure what to make of it. And the blood-soaked path they were about to walk began in that very moment. The southern desert felt like a living, breathing creature so hot that every step seemed to press down on the ragged breath of the land itself. Rowan led the way, but it was really Amida who did the tracking. Every wagon trail, every pile of ash, every horseshoe print tilted to the right, as if someone had been riding while injured. "They are in a hurry," Amida said, touching a line in the sand that still carried the scent of horse sweat. "They want to cross the border in 3 days. Rowan frowned. "A whole group, with children, cannot move that fast." "They can," Nahima said, "if they do not treat them like children." That stopped Rowan cold. He looked out over the vast expanse where the desert stretched like an endless, sun-bleached shroud. Hard to believe that somewhere out there, in all that death and silence, 15 children were trembling in the hands of monsters. By noon, they reached the first rest site, a cluster of abandoned huts, charred wooden stakes, and dark pools of dried blood. Lyria knelt down and picked up a small bone bracelet. "Miki's." Her voice shook. "My daughters." Rowan could not speak. Nothing is more terrifying than the look in a mother's eyes when she finds traces of her child in the dark. They moved on. This time faster. No breaks, no idle talk. By late afternoon, from a rocky ridge, Rowan looked down into a valley and spotted signs of a temporary camp. Ropes thrown carelessly on the ground. A wagon with a broken axle. Still warm black ash. A torn baby blanket, ripped in half. Kia clutched the piece of fabric. They slept here. "My baby was here last night." No one answered. They all heard the same thing. Urgency. That night, they crossed a stretch of dark land filled with animal bones, the hunting grounds of coyotes. Their howls echoed like warnings, but no one stopped. Rowan walked at the rear, carrying 2 extra water bags on his back to spare the others their strength. By midnight, trouble finally came. 3 bounty hunters. They stepped out from behind a rock outcrop, weapons raised. Some red women and a stray cowboy. The leader sneered. "There's a price on every one of their heads. Hand them over." Rowan stepped forward, shielding the women. "No one's getting handed over." The man spat. "You planning to die for them?" Rowan did not respond, but Nahima did with action. She surged forward like a sudden storm, snatched his knife, and drew a clean line across his throat. The second man never got a word out before Sahel tackled him, smashing his head into the rocks. The third turned to run, but Lyria put an arrow clean through his thigh, dropping him flat. Rowan let out a breath. "They are not going to forget this." Sahel looked at him, her eyes blazing. "Neither are we going to forget our children." They moved on, leaving 3 bodies behind in the dark. From that moment, Rowan knew they were no longer chasing. They were at war, and ahead of them were only the footprints of the damned. Thank you so much for being here. If this story brought something back to you, dusty sunsets, the sound of hoofbeats echoing in your heart, subscribe to my channel, so every day we can sit together once more, and I will tell you another story from the Wild West. On the 3rd night of their journey, they stopped beside a narrow canyon. Rowan built the fire, while the 5 women silently set up camp. No one had the energy to speak, but their fear had changed shape. It was no longer fear of the desert or their enemies, but fear of running out of time. Rowan watched their gaunt faces glow in the firelight. Worn-out warriors, mothers quietly breaking from the inside. And something in him began to break, too. The past buried deep for 5 years was now breathing just beneath the surface of his skin. He could not let them walk another mile, still believing he was innocent. Rowan stood, stepping into the firelight, his eyes red from too many sleepless nights. "Sahel," he said, "there is something I need to tell you all." The women froze. None of them moved. The fire reflected in their eyes like dozens of knives waiting to strike. Rowan swallowed hard. "I was there," he said slowly, "the day your village was burned." The air instantly turned to ice. Lyria shot to her feet. Nahima's hand went to her blade. Kaya clenched her fists so hard they bled. And Saheli, she just looked at him with eyes cold as a bottomless ravine. "Go on," she said. Rowan stared into the glowing coals as if looking back 5 years back to the day life and hell collided. "When I was young, I rode with a group of mercenaries. I thought we were just putting down some raiders. But the mission was to wipe out a tribe, to take their land." The desert wind seemed to go still. "I saw homes burning," Rowan continued, voice trembling. "I saw elders shot. I saw children dragged. I did not touch anyone. But I stood there. I did nothing." Nahima growled. "Doing nothing is still a crime." Rowan nodded. "Yes, I know." He drew a breath so deep it sounded like it came from a grave. "When I realized it was not an attack, but a massacre, I turned on them. I was beaten, burned, and left in the fire." He looked straight at Saheli. "And the one who pulled me out was a Chiricahua woman. Maybe the mother of one of you." Saheli swayed slightly. Her eyes flickered, then hardened again. "You lie." Rowan lifted his arm and rolled up his sleeve. Etched into his skin, the Thunderbird mark glowed red under the firelight. "She carved this into me so I would live. I never knew why." All 5 women stared at the mark, something only a Chiricahua soul was ever meant to carry. A moment passed that felt like an entire lifetime. Finally, Saheli stepped forward. She spoke just one sentence, soft as wind, sharp as a blade across the throat. "You did not die in the fire. So now you must live. To pay for it." Rowan nodded. "Until we find all 15 children, I am yours. I will see this through." Sahel looked deep into his eyes. There was no forgiveness in her gaze, only a decision. "Good," she said. "Then from this moment on, we are no longer strangers." She turned away. "We are those who share the same sin and the same purpose." The 4th morning cast a pale golden light over the land, but no one in the group felt any relief. After Rowan's confession, there had been no nod of forgiveness, no softening in their eyes. There was only one thing left that was certain. They would keep going, because ahead of them were 15 small souls still waiting. Amaita was the one who found the new trail deep, wide tracks from a heavy freight wagon. The sand was torn up, a few drops of dried blood forming a trail. They are moving camp, she said. Faster than we are. Sahali answered by walking faster, without looking back. They crossed the valley, climbed a ridge of stone sharp as blades, and descended into the red land where slavers often traded. Every clue they found cut deeper into their spirit. A child's shoe, a doll with a broken arm, a piece of cloth embroidered with Apache patterns. Kia held it to her chest like she was cradling her child. No one dared speak. By late afternoon, they heard a familiar hum, the steam engine of a smuggler's hauler. Rowan led them around a rocky outcrop and froze when he looked down into the narrow canyon below. An old army fort. Tall wooden walls. Mercenaries guarding the perimeter. 2 freight wagons parked at the gate. The sound of children crying echoed from inside. Lyria gripped her bow. They are in there. Nahima already had her knife out, her voice low and sharp as newly forged steel. We go in. Rowan scanned the area quickly. At least 12 men, fully armed. If we charge in head-on, I did not ask your opinion, Nahima snapped. Rowan exhaled. He understood their fury, but he also knew what waited inside was not a fight. It would be a slaughter if they made a single wrong move. If you die here, Rowan said carefully, who finds your children? Who protects the 10 others? Sahale turned. For the first time since they met, her gaze held something more than anger. It held calculation. You have a plan? She asked. Rowan nodded. Hit from 3 directions. I draw their attention at the front gate. Amaita and Lyria climb the north wall. Cut the line. Open a path. Nahima and Kea sneak around back and find where the children are held. I will set off an explosion to cause panic. Explosion from where? Kea asked. Rowan pointed his rifle barrel at an old barrel of liquor nearby. From this, they will think it is bandits attacking. Sahali studied the plan in silence. Then she gave a small nod. When the sun dipped below the horizon, they moved. Rowan fired the first shot into the barrel. Boom, a thunderous blast tore through the canyon like the first storm of the season. The mercenaries inside panicked, rushing toward the gate. Amaita and Lyria climbed the wall like wildcats, cut the rope, dropped the guards. Nahima and Kia slipped through the rear gap, silent as nightfall. Rowan alone drew their attention, rifle in hand, each bullet finding its mark with a cold precision. He was no longer the mercenary from the past. He was a man paying for every cry echoing through that fort. The sounds of children grew louder. Footsteps running, knives slashing, the desperate screams of slavers. 15 children were pulled from the final dark room. The 5 mothers broke down, but made no sound. They held their children like holding a piece of soul once thought lost. Rowan leaned against the wooden wall, panting, covered in blood and dust. They had saved the children, but the slavers were not done yet. And the scent of gunpowder in the wind carried the warning Rowan feared most. His old comrades, the ones who had once burned their tribe to the ground, were coming. The desert wind rose the moment the 15 children were freed. But it was not an ordinary wind. It was the kind that warned predators had caught the scent of blood. Rowan was the first to hear the hoofbeats. Unmistakable. Not the clumsy shuffle of petty slavers. It was the rhythm of men who used to ride beside him in another life. They are here, Rowan said, his grip tightening on the rifle like he was holding down a piece of his past he had tried to bury. The Black Spur. At the sound of that name, Nahima stood tall, her eyes going dark. The ones who slaughtered the children of the Chiricahua Sun clan. Lyria clenched her jaw. I will kill every last one. Sahale placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. No. Guard the children first. The hoofbeats crashed in like a storm of steel. About 7 mercenaries, rifles ready, leather armor, scarred faces. Men who survived by feeding on violence. The leader, Cassian Briggs, the man who once threw Rowan into the fire, dismounted with a beast's grin. Rowan Hale. So you did not die after all. His eyes flicked to the 5 Apache women and the children trembling behind them. And here you are, fighting for these savages. His voice cut like a blade. Rowan said nothing. He simply stepped forward, placing himself between the mercenaries and the children. Hand them over, Cassian said. There is a high price for Apache brats. As for the women, you know their worth. The 5 women all drew their weapons. No discussion. No glances exchanged. They all knew. This was not a battle. This was a reckoning. Rowan spoke softly. Go around back. Protect the children. Sahel stared at him for a long time. No, we fight together. Rowan wanted to smile, but the lump in his throat stopped him. This is my fault. Let me end it. Cassian laughed loud and hard. Then die like a fool. He pulled the trigger first. The bullet tore through the air, aimed straight at Sahale. Rowan did not think. He lunged, pushing her aside. The bullet ripped through his chest with a sound like the sky itself being torn. Rowan collapsed, blood blooming bright and fast. Rowan! Sahel's scream burst from her like an injured animal. She dropped to her knees, cradling him in her arms. Rowan gasped, his vision fading like ash over his eyes. You are alive. That is enough, he whispered. Cassian gave the order. The black spur charged like a pack of wolves. Sahel laid Rowan down, her eyes shifting from pain to something else, burning, deep, and ancient. The Thunderbird mark on her wrist ignited, glowing like coals stirred by gods. Nahima gasped. Sahel, mother's power. Sahel said nothing. She pressed her hand against Rowan's wound. A soft blue light spread outward, carried by the howling wind. It was not a miracle, it was the Kirikahua spirits, answering the call of a warrior mother. At the same time, Nahima, Lyria, Amaita, and Kea surged forward like 5 small storms. Knives, bows, stones, bare hands, everything became a weapon. The black spur fell one by one, never even grasping where the fury had come from. Sahel stayed by Rowan, her hand trembling but firm. Do not die, she whispered. Not when I still owe you, and you still owe me. The light slowly faded. Rowan drew breath again, weak, but warm. In that moment, Saheli understood something even the silent sky would bow to. She had saved the man who once carried the guilt of genocide. Twice. And now, their fates were forever bound. Behind them, the mercenaries' cries had gone silent. Every last member of the Black Spur was dead. The final battle was over. But the road that would carry them back to life was only just beginning. The desert wind after the battle carried the scent of gunpowder and warm earth. After the Black Spur was wiped out, Rowan was brought back to Hale's Rest. The wound was grave, but with the power of the Thunderbird mark and Sahel's steady care, he survived. It was not easy, but every time he opened his eyes through the haze, he saw the 5 Apache women sitting nearby changing bandages, boiling water, checking his temperature as if he was no longer the man guilty of the day their village burned, as if he had become one of them. By the time Rowan could stand, the 15 children were running wild across the ranch yard, their laughter bubbling like a fresh stream flowing through the heart of the dry desert. They stacked stones, built tents, raced past cactus roots as if life had never once tried to chain them down. We cannot return to our old tribe, Nahima said, eyes never leaving the children. There is nowhere to go back to. Rowan stood beside her, his arms still wrapped in bandages, but his eyes held a quiet, deep softness. Then stay, he said. This place was once a home for one lonely man. Now, it can be a home for all. Sahel looked out across the wide-open land, where wind swept past dry brush and dawn burned like fire along the edge of the sky. Home of the morning, she whispered. The name chose itself. From that day, they began to rebuild, not in the ways of the white man, nor entirely in the customs of the Apache, but in a new form. A place for the lost. For souls bruised by life. Rowan taught the children how to ride horses, use rope, and build fences. Sahale taught them to listen to the wind, read tracks, and respect the spirit of the land. Nahima trained the older ones to hold a bow like warriors. Amaita showed them how to heal, how to recognize medicine in the wild plants. Lyria and Kea cared for the youngest, sometimes holding, sometimes scolding with love, sometimes just sitting close enough for them to fall asleep in peace. And on a moonless night, with a cool breeze whispering through the healing wounds of every heart, Rowan stood with Sahel on the sandhill behind the ranch. There was no wedding, no wine, just a flickering fire, and the desert sky filled with stars. Rowan looked at her like he had seen her 1,000 times before but never spoken it. I do not deserve this. Sahel placed her hand on his chest, right where the wound once was. None of us do, she said. But we choose each other. They stood there beneath a sky so wide it made people feel small, and hearts so full it made every past sorrow seem like just a shadow behind them. The next morning, a light rain, rare as pure gold, fell over the home of the morning. The children laughed, running through it. Rowan and Sahel stood side by side, saying nothing, because after all the blood and ash, they had found something many search a lifetime for. Peace is not found. It is built day by day, choice by choice, wound by wound. And the home of the morning was the first time the desert ever knew what hope felt like. Dear friend, there are some people who are not born to walk into the darkness, but to stand at its edge and strike a spark. Rowan Hale, the man once lost in guilt, and Sahel, the warrior who carried the sorrow of an entire tribe. They did not find the light, they built it with scarred hands. The home of the morning is not just a shelter.